Afternoon, Kim.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm very well, very well. I'm really looking forward to this talk, Kim. And for all those people watching live, you'll be able to ask questions on the right-hand side above. For all those people who are watching on a replay, you'll be able to get in touch with Kim via LinkedIn or her email, which you'll find above on the registration page. Any trouble, give me a shout and I'll be able to link you guys up. And that goes to you as well, Kim. Any problems that you have, any technical issues, put your hand up and I'll be able to jump in.
You'll be my first port of call. I have a bone to pick with you, which is I can't believe I'm on after dog tourism. I think that's the highest bar for anyone to try and follow. I think not.
but if anyone can, Kim, I'm sure you can follow that. So if you'd like to pop your presentation up out the way. So Kim, I'll join you in about 15, 20 minutes and we can go through some Q&As then. So if anybody does have any questions, do please pop them up in the tab above and I will see you soon.
Yeah, see you soon. So hello everyone, really nice to see you here, or not see you here actually in this room, but I've got a couple of questions for you, so hopefully we can get some interaction going. My name is Kim Willis, I'm the Group Strategy Director at Cedar, and we're a global content agency. We integrate smart strategy, editorial expertise and commercial intelligence to build content experiences that build brands. And one of our areas of expertise, I mean, beyond being content experts, we're also massive travel enthusiasts. We are a group of people who we love researching travel. We love thinking about how to engage people around travel. We have some of the best travel journalists, editors, designers, photographers, videographers in the world as part of our stable. And I'm pretty sure, particularly if you're in the UK, but probably worldwide as well, that if you are a travel enthusiast, or indeed if you work in travel in any which way, you've probably at some point engaged with a piece of content that has been built at our house. So whether you've flown with Cathay Pacific or Iberia or British Airways, you might have picked up that in-flight magazine that's made by our team here at Cedar. If you perhaps have ever lusted after an experience of staying at a Mandarin Oriental hotel, I know that one day I hope I'll get to do that, you will definitely have come across destination inspiration content from our team. If you've ever engaged with the quirky and fun content on Eurostar's social channels, again, that's done in partnership with our team here at Cedar. We're absolutely passionate about travel, and you can imagine that given that's the portfolio of brands that we work with on the travel side, it's been a pretty interesting year for us. And I guess what I wanted to do was, I'm conscious we're 6 months into this crisis, this utter shift in how we work in the travel industry and travel content marketing. And I really wanted to use this chance to take a second for us to reflect on the journey we've been on and the ways in which content marketing, I believe, has fundamentally changed in the travel industry, and how we're using content marketing to better serve customers in this most trying of times across the industry. But before we do that, I'd love to get a bit of a sense of you guys. I can see there's 29 people here, and I'm going to ask you a question for you to type into the chat, and feel free to do this if you feel comfortable. I would love to just get a sense from you about your holiday plans for the next 3 months. So what I'd like to invite you to do, if you feel comfortable doing so in the chat, is just write A, if you're going on holiday in your home country in the next 3 months, B, if you're going in another country, or C, if you're not going on holiday in 3 months. A, B, yes, Dan, yes, we know. Oh, yeah, right. A is lots of home country, people going away, a couple not going at all. A and B, of course, Ross Clark, I'd expect nothing less. I hope B too. A in the next 2 months, B if we push it to 5 months. Nice, I like it. So I guess what we're seeing, just even, I need to get out, we're seeing a lot of that too in the research. So I think what that's telling us actually is that it's quite interesting to me. If we'd asked this question exactly a year ago, the answers would have been thoroughly different. We're about to go into the summer holidays here in the UK. We'd all be jetting off all over the world, and things have really changed. And we're seeing that in the research. And so I guess what I wanted to do with this presentation really is to sort of take you a bit behind the curtain of our shop at Cedar about how travel really has changed this year, and how we've changed the content that we are supporting our clients with in order to respond to these thoroughly new times, and to remind us, I think, about just how wild this year has been. I kind of wanted to invite you all just to take a second and remind yourself where we were in January 2020. So this slide is particular to Britain, but I'm sure you will, if many of you are global, you'll be thinking about this globally, about what was happening in the world in January 2020 this year. So big news, certainly, here in the UK was the Australian wildfires. That was a really big news story. We had a new Prime Minister in Boris Johnson. We were leaving the EU at the end of January. And we'd also come off the back of a really crappy winter. It had been very rainy, really cold. And part of the job of my team is to look out into the world at these kind of things, these kind of trends, and start to predict how that might influence how customers are thinking about travel, what's in their minds, what questions they have, what needs they have. And so, we looked at this and we were saying, okay, well, winter sun is going to be big. People are going to be thinking a lot about how they get out into the sunshine. But there was also this rising trend, which I'm going to talk about a bit, which I alluded to in a blog post I wrote back in January. So I wrote this post called Travel and Content in 2020 and Beyond, the 7 trends that really matter. And I will be completely honest in saying it's the only piece of writing I've done that pretty much went out of date virtually instantaneously. There's nothing in this pretty much now that actually is true or even correct, such as trends forecasting. But I'm going to read you what we thought travel was going to look like in 2020 back in January. So it's 2020 and travel is booming. Global international tourism has doubled in the last 20 years and is expected to take a further 30% leap in the coming decade. The media for discovering and booking and managing travel experiences are in flux. 5G mobile connectivity, multi-dimensional social platforms, and a data-led world of predictive personalization will continue to shift behavior. At the same time, the traveler's mindset is evolving as fast as the technology, with especially in the rise of conscious travel, which will have even the highest flying globetrotters considering their eco footprint. So off the bat, that's where we thought travel was going in 2020, and this is how we work. We do a huge annual review of all the trends reports out there, a lot of desk research, a lot of original research to give us a sense about where travel's going, what customers are interested in, and therefore how content strategies need to change. And yeah, these were 7 of the trends we expected to see coming up. And of these 7, actually, it seemed like the hottest topic of the time was sustainability, or even broadening that out to what we were calling good travel. So how can we give back and have a positive impact on the world through our travels? And that might be through our eco footprint, that might be through giving back to community investment projects, that might be reducing our plastic usage when we're traveling. So there's all sorts of ways that we can have a more positive impact on the world when we travel. And it seemed like this conversation was just rising and rising. What we were less clear on actually at this point is whether it was going to change travel behavior. And so myself and our insight team at Cedar, my amazing insight director, Chris Raymond, we had a conversation about this and we said, well, we need to know. So let's get some research in field. So we put together a research report to support us with some of the content we were creating. We'd already integrated eco-consciousness into a lot of the content we were creating for our clients. It was a core pillar of most of our content strategies for our clients. So for British Airways, for instance, we had David Attenborough on the cover of High Life talking about how you can connect more with nature and how you can give back to conservation projects when you're traveling. We had some really great top tips going out to all the executive club members about how they can do things like avoid over-tourism and reduce their plastic usage. So really helping customers to be more sustainable in their travel choices. But we wanted to really get more under the skin of this. We wanted to really understand where the population was sitting on the sustainability issue. So we put this research out into field. This was the end of February. And roughly, actually, what we found, I was kind of surprised by it, actually, was that pretty much if you take the British population, you could split them into 3 broad camps. You have the camp who care about sustainability and are changing their travel behaviours. You have the camp in the middle who care about sustainability but aren't changing their travel behaviours, but they would like to know more. They would like to understand more about what they can do to be more environmentally conscious when they're travelling. And then you have a cohort, and the stats here reflect that cohort, who actually don't, it's just not an issue for them. They don't really want to hear brands talking about their environmental credentials. They're really very interested in much more in kind of speed and convenience and budget. And these things are just a much bigger factor in people's decision making. The reason I'm mentioning this and just showing you these stats really isn't really to tell you about sustainability, but to put it in contrast, because what I want you to notice here is the dates of this research. End of February this year. So we're sitting there and we're thinking, okay, we're going to put some research in field asking people about their travel behaviour, and there's this thing happening. There's this thing happening in the world. And so quite last minute, Chris absolutely does the right thing and says, look, we need to get a question on this survey about coronavirus. We need to understand how this is going to affect travel behaviour. So this is before lockdown. This is before any particular panic actually in the UK. We put in a question to see how coronavirus was affecting how people think about travel. And we asked them, what are their concerns? Would their concerns about coronavirus stop them from travelling to certain destinations? And we had a whopping 73% of people saying yes, it would. Now, there are two things that this interests me about this as a strategist. The first is that it's compared to our sustainability answers. This is a whopping number. It's showing almost an instant change in travel behaviour. And secondly, it's something that applies to everyone. So whereas with sustainability, what we were seeing is that we needed a very segmented approach. We were seeing that different audiences had different needs and different questions, and that we would need to segment our content accordingly. But what we're seeing from the coronavirus is it's something that seems to cut across all audience groups. There are different segments in how they're responding to this, and we started to get into that as the months rolled on. But initially, what was clear is that this was an absolute watershed moment in terms of our travel content marketing. What it was telling us is that pretty much the content strategies we've developed for most of our clients for this year suddenly were null and void. We had to go back to the drawing board, and which is essentially what we did. We stopped. We paused for about an hour, which is about as much time as we had in this very fast-moving world. And we had to start to rethink. We had to start to rethink what was the role of content in travel in a world where only essential travel is possible. What do these brands have to say that will help people through these times? And how can we make sure these brands will do our part to help brands be more resilient to what is going to be quite an interesting area and time for the travel industry in general? And so we stop, we rethink, and we go back to our core model. So at Cedar, we, like most content agencies, we work on a content development wheel, a content development cycle. We start with our insight. What are our customers telling us about what they want to know? How does that inform our content strategy? And then how can we develop the content, get it out across multiple channels, and constantly testing and learning so that we can really improve and optimize as we go. Now, typically, if we're working on a monthly or a quarterly cycle for content development, this is a process that would, we put quite a lot of thought into, would take quite a lot of time over. What we were finding through the months of April and May in particular with coronavirus is that attitudes and behaviours and expectations were shifting pretty much weekly, sometimes almost daily. And so this cycle was something we had to start to get into on a constant wheel. We were constantly rechecking ourselves, rechecking ourselves and testing, so that we could make sure that we were delivering the right content for the right brand to the right audience to support them in achieving their particular objectives. So this was the first shift for us, that we had to find a way to operate at speed, and we had to speed up this particular process. The second shift was in the insight, because what we were finding is that this shift into moving from kind of out in the world approach to living to working from home in March, April and May was having a fundamental impact on people's attitudes and behaviours. So some of the things we were seeing across the board, for instance, I'm not going to read all of these out, but some of the things we were seeing is, first of all, the demand for digital content went through the roof. 80% of people in the UK were consuming more content than ever during this time. And we were seeing this across every brand we worked with, benchmark beating engagement levels, because People were stuck at home. They were predominantly living their lives through their phones. And so this said to us, content marketing, the content we put out, is actually incredibly important at this moment. We saw a number of areas which were influencing the kinds of content we were putting out. So the rise in interest in health and hygiene, for instance, or the rise in interest in budget savviness, that people were very conscious about where they're spending their money. So we had to think about, okay, where can we give value? How can we help people make the most of the money they're spending? But we were also seeing a real change in how content was being used. This was an absolutely accelerated time for things like TikTok viral activities, Zoom quizzes, live streaming of gigs and parties, webinars like this. I mean, had anyone been on Zoom before March? I don't think anyone had been on Zoom before March, and yet we were spending our life on Zoom. And this was, I think, to me, this is fundamentally changing our relationship with live content in a digital world. We have become much more used to engaging in these kinds of spaces and connecting with one another. And that changes the nature of how you embed a content strategy for a brand. So there was a lot of changes happening that we were pulling together on a really regular basis internally. There were also shifts that were happening in travel. So I will be eternally grateful to Global Web Index, was what they did throughout coronavirus. Is they made their huge survey, 15,000 people surveyed every couple of weeks. They made that publicly available for free throughout the coronavirus intensive lockdown period. And this was an absolute goldmine, a treasure trove of insight into how people's travel behaviors were starting to change. Because what we were starting to see was two things. First of all, people were delaying their booking of vacations, and they were particularly interested in safety and hygiene and reassurance. That was becoming an absolute rising, essential part of the travel experience in the way that it hadn't been before coronavirus. And that said to us, we have to start to integrate those messages much more deeply into the content we're creating. And then secondly, people wanted to travel, much like Stephanie, people wanted to get out. For a significant portion of the population, a vacation was the first thing they wanted to do when lockdown measures were lifted. The nature of that travel might change for a while. So we might see people doing more staycations, maybe they're going short haul rather than long haul. So there were some changes in the nature of travel that people might then engage with. But there was this kind of pent-up desire for travel, and how we express this internally, and we constantly use this as a sense check on all the content we're creating for every single one of our clients at the moment, is that there is this new travel mindset. And there are these two sides of this coin, right? So you basically have on the one side this desire to escape, this desire to get out, see something new, do something different, have a new perspective, see the sea, see the mountains, the things that we just haven't had access to. And then on the flip side of that, there's this desire for reassurance, for safety, for knowing it's going to be okay, for knowing my family are going to be okay. And those two things from a content perspective go hand in hand, because you can't reassure people unless they've already thought, I might want to go away. And you can't get people to want to go away unless they feel reassured that it's going to be safe. And so this was going to be really important for us in all the content we created. We had to match escapism and reassurance every step of the way, and not do more of one or the other, because it would start to unbalance our audience and unbalance the content. So that's the first side of things, was the insight side of things that was really important. The second was the question of, okay, in a world where the nature of the products that the clients that we are delivering for has fundamentally changed quite significantly for a temporary period of time, what does that mean for what we can say? Where are our permissions? What can we talk about? Because if we're talking about Mandarin Oriental, for instance, we can't say during this period, we can't invite you to come and stay at the Mandarin Oriental Hong Kong because it wasn't open. So what do we talk about? What is it we actually have legitimate and authentic reason to have a voice in the market about? And so for us, that was a brand strategy question. We asked ourselves these questions about, well, what do you do when a brand can't quite do what it's there for, can't do its what? Well, what you do is you go back to the why. You go back to the reason that brand exists in the first place. And that plays out in a whole range of ways. But I think that the core of this is that what we were finding is that in 2020, content marketing for this period of time is the brand and customer experience. People weren't going out of their homes, they weren't going down the high street, they weren't going to shops, they weren't seeing the billboard advertising, they weren't in the airports, they weren't having the touch points to engage with brand experiences in the way they once did. The primary means of engaging with a brand was through digital content. which meant that digital content marketing essentially became the brand experience for this time. And if that's the case, then we needed to make sure that every single piece of content was absolutely living and breathing the purpose of the brand during this critical time. A couple of ways that this plays out, I'm just going to, from the stable of brands that we work with. For British Airways, for instance, you will all know that BA's promise to the world is to fly to serve. Now, BA did not stop flying during this period. There were repatriation flights. They kept the world moving. They were flying vital cargo around the world constantly and serving the world during this period of time. But from a customer perspective, we were under only essential travel directions, so we couldn't fly. So what do we expect from BA at that time? Well, if they can't fly us, they can still serve us, right? And this became a kind of internal mantra for us. We might not be able to fly you for now, but we can still serve you. And what are the ways that we can do that? And when we asked that question, it opened up a whole range of ways that content can support customers through this part of the journey. There's the good news about how BA is working with voluntary organisations throughout this period. So their partnership with the British Red Cross and St John's Ambulance to really support the effort around tackling this crisis. There are the many ways that BA has been involving its innovation of the customer experience to really add in those elements of reassurance so that we know that when we fly, we can fly with confidence. My personal favourite is that you can collect Avios, which is basically the currency that you earn when you're an executive club member when you fly, that gives you money off future flights, and essentially you can redeem it against future flights. You can earn Avios when you buy from a whole range of different retailers, including my personal favourite, Majestic Wines, something we were buying a lot of during lockdown. So not only can you buy those products, but you can get Avios points back when you buy those products, essentially saving a bank of Avios that you could use against future flights, which is a huge value to BA's executive club members. And then, of course, we knew that staycations were going to be a big deal. We knew that from the research back in April. And so we were already seeding content through email saying, okay, how about a UK staycation? Where do you go? What do you pack? How can you make sure you have a good time? How can you make sure you do this safely while fueling your escapism? And so this was a totally different content strategy to the one we started the year with, but one that both builds that reassurance and also starts to fuel that escapism while giving BA a way in which it can serve its customer base. If we think about Mandarin Oriental, it's a slightly different proposition, but the method was pretty similar. So what we're talking about here is that for Mandarin Oriental, it's luxury as it's lived. It's about really enjoying your stay and your time in these beautiful hotels and the greatest hotels in the world. And so Mandarin Oriental was saying, okay, well, we want you to enjoy your stay. That's what we're here for. But how about we help people enjoy their stay at home? How about we help people make their at-home lockdown experience as beautiful and wonderful potentially as Mandarin Oriental one? And so that was a really fast and innovative pivot for the brand. We were talking about delivering at-home recipes and delivering Mandarin Oriental food to people's homes. We had the spa experts from across the world, from Mandarin Oriental's absolutely astonishingly beautiful spas, were giving their tips and Q&As for how to create a wonderful at-home spa experience. And this brand is a dreamy brand, right? And that travel escapism was a really important part of their whole brand experience. And so we could do things like these really gorgeous Instagram stories that were helping people sort of continue to dream about the most beautiful places in the world. That's one of them there. And you can see just at this point, I think had 7,000 people had looked at this particular Instagram story. So these are ways we could keep that engagement going in a way that was sensitive to the time, that was helping people continue to enjoy their stay effectively, and was continuing to maintain that relationship between the brand and customers, which essentially is the core of long-term brand resilience, right? So these were some of the ways that we were shifting these content strategies. But I guess what this comes down to is that for me in 2020, content marketing is customer service. It's fundamentally about understanding where your customers are at, what they're thinking, and how can we help them, whether that's by fueling escapism or whether that's in helping to reassure them about the nature of travel. And as we move forward over the coming 6 months, as the world starts to reopen, as we start to find ways in which we can continue to explore the world, I think there are 3 things that are going to be absolutely vital for us as content marketers about how we can serve the brands that we are working with. And I think the first is insights. It has served us incredibly well over the past few months, and it can't be jumped over. We have to know what our customers are thinking. We have to know how they feel about travel. We have to be able to create content that resonates with them. And so that insight is really important. The second is speed, and that really goes back to that content development wheel, that idea of being able to move really quickly from insight into strategy, into delivery, and then testing and learning as you go. But the other thing to say about speed is that speed relies on good relationships, and something that we found absolutely essential to us in this period was the good relationships we have in our teams and the excellent relationships we have with our clients, because those good relationships are what enables speed to happen. It's essentially like the train tracks that enables the train to go faster. And so investing in really good client relationships, really good relationships in your teams, making sure your teams work well together is what means you can move fast. And then finally, and anyone from my team who is on this call will know this is my personal kind of mantra at the moment, and that's about trust, right? And this is for everyone. I think this is to say for every single one of us who are working in travel or content, who love travel, who are interested in storytelling around travel. All of us collectively have a job to do right now in rebuilding trust in the industry, in letting customers know that it's absolutely, that the world is there for them and that they can explore it with confidence. And so that means that we have to be really careful about the content we're putting out. We have to make sure it's fact checked. We have to make sure that it's solid. We have to make sure that we're not promoting, say, restaurants or places or destinations that might not be open yet or that might not be able to cope with them yet. We have to respond to the world we're in. And that is the role of content marketing. That means we can't just rehash what we did last year. It means we have to make sure it's relevant for now. And if we do that, we'll reassure people and we'll be able to reignite that spark of escapism and excitement and adventure that will get the world traveling again. So yeah, that's all for me, and I would be delighted for your questions, and I really hope you all have happy travels.
Yeah, Kim, thanks so much for that. And I definitely agree that content marketing is like the customer service now. We are you're looking at ways of engaging, educating with an audience. So I definitely think that's the case. What tips would you give to anyone now who, if there's anyone watching this, maybe from the client side, not to give free information away, but if there's someone who's now all of a sudden never done anything content marketing related before, what would be the first kind of thing that you would say to someone, as in like a red flag to look out for?
I mean, I have to say, I say this because I'm a strategist, so this is definitely where I come from. But I think if you're a brand who works in the travel environment that hasn't done much of content or storytelling yet, I would really encourage you to start where your customers are. So start with some research. It might be a really simple poll on social media. It might be a really simple survey just to understand where they're at with regard to how they feel about travel, how confident they feel, where do they want to go, what would be important to them in terms of getting back out there, and then designing your content around what your customers are telling you they need, because that is changing all the time. We're seeing it across all a lot of clients, and so I think starting with that research, starting with where your customers are, it used to be a nice, and now it's a non-negotiable.
Excellent. We've got a question from Stephanie here. It says, Kim, what do you think are some signs of optimism you're seeing as far as travel is concerned for the UK market?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm right now, just, so just a bit of disclosure. So I'm working this week, right? But I'm working this week from Cornwall.
Oh,
so
nice.
Because we're all working from home, one of the benefits of the working from home thing is that you can work from anywhere. And I think what we are seeing this summer is that people are being really creative about where they're going and how they're spending their time to re-explore the country we're in, to re-explore Britain. We're seeing a massive rise in staycations, a massive rise in interest in traveling here. So I think that's a really positive area. And I think we're also seeing some really positive stats around people like taking short haul routes. We can't get enough of Greece right now. My Instagram feed is just full of travel journalists in Greece. I'm so jealous as I look out on this rainy vista of Cornwall. And I think that is really encouraging, because people work on the basis of social norms, right? If you see other people doing something, you want to do it yourself. And the more we start to see that people are confidently traveling to places like Greece and having an amazing time in those blue waters, we'll all be booking that flight.
Yeah, I agree with you, because when I saw that someone had done that, where they were working from home, but they were working from a different part of the UK, and I said to my girlfriend, I was like, why don't we just go and do that? We'll go and rent an Airbnb somewhere and we'll both work from home, but like somewhere else. And she was like, yeah, we've got 3 cats to look after. Oh yeah, that's
We need
why.
a cat hotel. That's what we need.
Do you know what? Do you know what? If Jonathan's still watching, if you take cats in the Betsy, I'd be more than happy to come there. Some great comments from all this. Stephanie said we should all meet in Greece. I mean, I would have to be dragged there, but if I had to, I would do it. I'm dressed for it already, so why not? But massive thanks for that, Kim. Really appreciate the time there. And if anybody's got any questions for Kim, I know obviously a lot of people will be watching this on the replay. So if anybody does have any questions or would just like to connect with Kim on LinkedIn, I'll send an email out with all the details of today's speakers. But also a replay will be sent out later this afternoon. So if you're watching this on replay, please do get in touch with all of our speakers and Kim as well. So a massive thank you, Kim. And I'll be bringing our next speaker, Jody from Experience Kissimmee. I always called it, but I'm probably going to get my wrist slapped now for saying it wrong. Massive thanks, Kim. Looking forward to speaking to you again.
No worries. Nice to see you.
I know.